Dr. Keith here, inflammation number 2, which is chemical sensitivity. 100 years ago, that maybe wasn't so important. I'm not saying it didn't exist, but it was nothing like today. There are something like 70 million chemicals have been commercially prepared, and at any one time, 70, 80, 90,000 of these things are actually in production. We're breathing them on a regular basis. In fact, we're living in what I call a chemical blizzard. Some of it doesn't even have to be from your own community. You know, it blows in. If you look at satellite pictures of the Pacific Ocean, there's what's called brown smog or brown aerosol traveling across the Pacific from China. And it travels inland in the US as far inland as Arizona, up in Payson in Arizona. Even the birds are covered in it. And you can actually tell which power station it is from the composition. So, you know, don't be smug and think, well, I live out in the country, I live on the ocean shore. Yes, so what? You know, it's being blown in and you're breathing it, trust me. And everybody who's been tested, this was done years ago when I was new to the game, we're back in the 80s, where people were being tested and found to have hundreds of chemicals in their body with significant clinical quantities, in fact. The point is, some people are very sensitive. You know, there's some, if you imagine the bell curve, there's people at this end where they could practically eat poison and they wouldn't come to any harm. Well, they would eventually, of course. But if you go to the other end of the so-called bell curve, you've got people who are super sensitive and they react very rapidly and they become very ill very quickly. In fact, in my 1986 book, I introduced this term, human canaries. You know, canaries that they used to take down the coal mines, and if the canary fell over dead, they knew that the air was poisonous. This is not good for humans, and they had to get out. So it seems to me, anyway, that we have a lot of human canaries. You know, they're feeling sick, unwell, reacting to these ambient substances, and of course the chemical industry manufacturers who are totally irresponsible, don't care, and they try and blag it off with fake science, or try and say, well, it's just you people who are sensitive, it's your problem, it's not our problem, the average person doesn't feel ill. Well, I don't think that's even true anymore. The average person now, I think, would feel fairly unwell with loads that chemical loads and burdens that they're carrying. Anyway, this is about inflammation. What I'm saying is these low-level chemicals in your environment can cause ongoing inflammation of a very unpleasant kind, and a kind that causes ill health. And I think you need to know to do something about it. Now, one of the simplest things I wrote about in my third book, I called it the nose survey. My theory was, well, it's not theory, it's practical knowledge and learning. It's just, if there's enough to smell, there's enough to cause symptoms. In other words, enough to make you ill. So if you go through the house smelling, you know, in wardrobes, the bathroom cupboards, under the sink, in the garage, you'll find all kinds of smelly chemicals there. You need to get rid of them. And the simplest intermediate step I used to do for people is get a giant polythene bag, throw everything in that, seal it up with sellotape and put it in the garage and leave it alone for 4 to 6 weeks and just see what difference it makes. You've got to be alert to things like, you know, detergents and cleaning fluids, cosmetics. Those are really bad news, the stuff that ladies put on themselves. A lot of them are extremely toxic and inflammatory. Even felt tip pens, there's all kinds of things. If you can smell it, then it can make you ill. Remember, that's the simple rule. So in order to quench inflammation, all of us should lower our chemical burden. You might need to get an air filter, activated carbon kind that will suck chemicals out. Well, it sucks the wrong word, but you know, it will trap organic chemicals, you know, organic volatile compounds will be trapped in the carbon, and so the air is much cleaner when it comes out through the air filter. So get an air filter, filter your tap water because there's an awful lot of chemicals in what you drink. Reverse osmosis is probably the best, the cleanest, but don't forget, if you do, that you've got to replace some or all of those minerals that you're going to be losing. But it's important. You need to quench inflammation. It's vital for longevity, and chemicals definitely the number 2 troublemaker. So go to it.